In the next couple of tutorial videos, we're going to be looking at a new chapter, and in this chapter we're going to be looking at loops. So in your Java program there may be a situation when you need to execute a block of code a certain amount of times, and that's referred to as a loop. So in Java you have three loop statements, and in this video we're going to be looking at the first loop statement, which is called while. So as you can see in the example next to it, the while statement starts off like any other statement. You start by declaring your variable, in this case named count, which is equal to 1, and then you open up your loop statement. So while count is inferior to 11, we want to print out this sentence, and then at the end here you can see we have count plus plus, so count being the variable, and we have plus plus next to it. Now in Java this is known as incrementation. So what that means is you're basically adding 1 to the variable next to it. So in this case you're basically doing, this translates into count plus 1. So keep that in mind. You're probably wondering, well, that's very interesting, but what purpose does that serve? We'll see that in detail in the next step, so meet me in the next step. So now that we've understood the theory behind the while loop statement, let's apply that to a practical example. So let's start off by creating a variable, and we'll keep to the example we saw before. So let's call it count, and we'll assign that variable 1, for example. And then we're going to open up our loop statement, so while, and we're going to type the condition. So while count is inferior to 11, open up the brackets. Don't forget the indentation here, Eclipse does it automatically. We want to print out the following sentence: count is, and then add the variable count at the end here. Then don't forget, at the end we have our increment of count. So if you recall, as I said, when you increment a variable in Java, you're adding 1 to it. So you're probably wondering to yourself, yeah, but why do we need to do that here? Well, to best explain that, what we're going to do to start off with is we're going to delete this instruction here, and we're going to run the program like this. So just to recap, we have a variable count which is equal to 1, and we've created a loop which says while count is inferior to 11, we want to print out this sentence. So let's run this. As you can see, we have an infinite number of results. Count is 1, count is 1, an infinite number of times. Now why is that? Well, that's because if you look carefully at the code here, we've said that count is equal to 1, and then in our loop we've said while count is inferior to 11, we want to print out this sentence. Well, since count is equal to 1, it's always going to be inferior to 11. So that's why at the end of our program here we need to increment count. So we need to add 1 to it, and we have to make sure it's done inside the loop. So it's always adding 1 to count. So it's going to start off by executing count plus 1, which is 2, and then it's going to do, so count takes on the value of 2, and then it's going to again count plus 1, so 2 plus 1 is 3, etc., etc., until it gets to the condition, until count reaches 11. So let's run the program like this, and as you can see, count is 1, count is 2, count is 3, etc., until it reaches 11. And because we said it's inferior to 11, it will stop at count is 10. So that's why it's very important to increment at the end of your loop statements. So this is how you use a while loop statement. In the next couple of videos we're going to see how to use the other loop statements.